Okay, we are recording now, so we're good to go. All right. So welcome everybody to our Digital Services Forum biweekly call. Today we're going to have a panel on something I've been wanting to do for a while, to talk to some product owners that own the platform. So we're talking a lot about digital products lately, and digital products can be made up of applications, services, or even hardware. And any combination of those are what's going to make up digital products. So we've been talking a little bit about that. We had Mark on a few months back, Mark Bodman, to talk about how we're moving from the digital services to more of a digital product base, which could include digital services, right? So we're trying to figure that out a little bit. So today we're going to talk about actually managing the platform. So we're going to talk about that platform owner role, and then look at that platform owner, because they're managing a bunch of digital products for people, but actually look at the digital product they're managing directly, which is a little bit of a shift on things instead of talking about other ones. So before I get started, we want to go through a little bit about what the group is about. So if today's your first time, first of all, we do a lot of different topics. So we have people on here all the time whose first time it is. So if it is your first time today, can you just post your name in the chat and then where you're from, and then a little bit about what you do, if just your role. So if you're a platform owner or you're a developer, just let us know who you are, just so we could say hello, and we have that recorded in there so we know that you're part of the forum. And welcome if it is your first time. All right, I see Jacob's coming in there. All right, the group, there'll be a link here, and we could post this link, if somebody could post that link in chat on the bottom. That's a link to our community page. So that's our about page. And basically we have 4 different areas that we're going to have in there. So the first one, you probably saw that already because you got here. It's the Zoom invite. And that Zoom invite stays consistent. So you can send that around to other people in your company if you think there's a topic that would be of interest to them. Then there's a forum homepage. And this is on the ServiceNow community, where we post a lot of the things that we try to share. That's what the forum's really all about, right? Is sharing as much as we can. There's a YouTube channel, and this meeting today with all the other ones are recorded and put out on that YouTube channel a couple of days after we have the call. So this one should be on there by Monday. And then there's a last thing is we have a shared instance. It's a little beat up right now because there's a lot of people in there, but I'm working on that instance to get us a little bit more snappy of an instance to use for our group. So we have about 125, 130 admins on that instance right now. But what's nice about that instance is a lot of times when we do demos, which we won't be doing today, we'll put everything we do on that instance. And then if you're curious about it or want to go look for more after the demo, you can jump on the instance and see where that configuration is. So we like to use that whenever we can, just to make sure that you can go in and kind of reproduce what we did on the call. And it's not a bunch of demo magic that you can't figure out how we did it. So that's all the resources that are available on the forum. So a little bit of content off that forum channel, and then a little bit of code even on the content channel and on the shared instance. It's the reason we created this forum initially was to really focus on the CMDB and kind of the core service delivery of ServiceNow. And we changed it last year, and our big focus now is really to be front and center in that digital transformation effort going on across the world. And a big part of what we're doing with the modeling and with the services, right, is being able to package those in a way that you can enable transformation. So our mission is to really enable the members we have to have a seat at that table when we're talking about these big transformative initiatives. So we share, as I said before, on the community, you'll see different discussions, papers, the shared instance, and a lot of these videos, people just might take a clip out of the video, or might say, hey, that slide we did this week was really useful. Can I go back and grab that slide? Right? And so the architecture team hosts it. I'm on the enterprise architecture team at ServiceNow. We're a host of the forum, right? But it's a community. It's not a ServiceNow thing that's put on every week. We just run the community and we help you curate the content. But we really like to hear our members talk as much as hearing from ServiceNow people. So it's not a place to come for ServiceNow demos. There's other places for that. This is more about the core of the platform. Okay, and we do the biggest meetings we have are the one you're on today. These bi-weekly hour-long meetings. So today's topics, what we're going to do is we're going to go in and talk to some digital product owners of the ServiceNow platform. So I'm going to intro those panelists. We're going to let them go through a little bit of their background and tell you where they came from and how they got to where they are today. Then we're going to talk about specifically where the product sits. So where does ServiceNow sit in those definitions of digital products that we've been talking about over the last few meetings? And I'll review that if you haven't been here before. I see there's a couple of people on for the first time. So if you haven't been here before, I'll talk about digital product categories a little bit before we go into the questioning. I'll open it up for some Q&A. So as you're going along, make sure you're posting your questions in there, and we'll get back to the questions during that Q&A session. So if you're not comfortable coming off mute, you can just type your question in and we'll get to it. Or if you do want to come off mute during that time, that's preferable if you're okay with it. We have a pretty small group, so it's not, there's not, it won't be unmanageable if you want to come off mute and ask your question. Yeah, I see that, Mitch. So yeah, just post it in chat. I didn't know there wasn't another Q&A section. Thanks for that. Okay, and then we'll circle back around for some advice for the other platform owners. Just advice on what they do. All right, so our panelists for today, we have Lou. Lou's coming. He's a program manager for ServiceNow at Paradigm. But he does own the platform, right? So that's a role, and that's the first thing I think to call out here. Sometimes this is a role of the platform owner, but your title is not going to necessarily be that. And in the case here, you see with Lou, and then Tina from Western Governors. She is a platform owner, but that's not her main title. And then the same with Thomas too. So Thomas works in an area. So and Tom comes from the state of Colorado, where he owns the platform over there. So they take on the responsibilities of platform owner. And I keep going through this, and we'll talk a little bit when we get to that section, but we keep going through this, that it's not always going to be a ServiceNow platform owner. But sometimes it is, right? Sometimes what we'll have is when we go in, we'll see that there's actually these jobs out there today, and they actually advertise for the global IT service management and ServiceNow platform owner. So I pasted a couple of these roles in here so that you can see this. So they are becoming more and more prevalent, where they're hiring people, and that's their title, right? Is ServiceNow product owner. But in the case here, or ServiceNow platform owner. But in the case here, I want you to share these people that we have on the call today, our panelists, they are doing these jobs. Right. Now, if we go into, there's a link here. So if you do get these slides, and like I said, this is one of the things we'll make available. There's a link that has all of the core ServiceNow roles defined. And one of them is platform owner. So you'll see that the platform owner, a big part of what they do is the roadmap, and they shape demand coming in for the platform. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. A lot of times when you come in from these outside roles, a lot of the tasks in there, what you do is actually generated from some of the things that we put out in ServiceNow. So this is off the ServiceNow page. Over the last few months, we've been talking a lot about, probably going back 6 months, if you go back in some more recordings, we've been talking about governance a lot. So the platform owner is on this team, right? When you're bringing in ServiceNow, the platform owner is probably the key person you need to seat first. And they actually talk about that in the roles, because the platform owner communicates up to the executive sponsors, right? And because there will be one of the platforms on many in your organization. There's probably a couple ERP platforms. There might be other platforms besides ServiceNow. So this platform owner is up there representing their platform, right? In this case, ServiceNow, to that executive team who might be looking at 5 or 6 different platforms that they use across their organization. At the same time, the platform owner has to be able to clearly communicate what they need and what the priority is, so that they can work with their team, the architects and the developers and everybody else, to make sure that that roadmap is carried out. So a lot of times, right, you're the one gateway, the one person that sees everything that's going on is that platform owner. All right, and then the last piece here, the part that I didn't see a lot of in ServiceNow, because when I initially started, everybody was in IT, right? There wasn't as much on the outside. But when you talk about a digital product manager versus like a service owner or a service manager, a big part of what the digital product manager does is the outbound part. right? You're basically a marketing person. You own this platform, and your job is to sell it. Your job is to get as many people to use it as possible, because that's why they bring platforms in, right? The organization brings platforms in to do consolidations. So it's your job to really go out there and say, this is the best place to use it and the best time to use it. And so those are some of the things that when we look at that platform owner role, where they come from, how they come in, and then how they fill certain responsibilities to make sure that that platform gets out there. So Tom, you've worked at the state of Colorado. Is Tom on? I was going to start with him.
I am.
Oh, hey, Tom.
Good morning, John.
So you worked for Colorado for, I think it's just over a year, right?
No, 4 years.
Okay. And you've been in for 4 years now. And then you think, so your experience before this, working at the state, though, before being a platform owner, has helped you in your role today, right?
Oh, absolutely. And thanks for inviting me to be a panelist, John. Sure. Yeah, I have a pretty long career. I spent about 20 years selling technology, but I've also had the opportunity to work in HR, in accounting. I've done recruiting. I've been in the banking industry. So I'm probably a little more tenured when it comes to some of my skills. I've also had the chance to be a PM and a BA. So, I mean, I've understand technology. When I look at our role as product owners, it's really a mix. And I think you and I have talked about this, John, of this technology side as well as a marketing side. And I think I bring a lot of that experience to the table with just what I've accumulated through my career.
Good deal. Yeah. And it seems like, Lou, you're the same way. You came from a product management background, right, at your last company. And then that's where you were before, Tom. You were in product management, and then you came into the platform owner role.
Absolutely. I went from kind of PM and BA work into platform ownership, and I've managed HR applications, service desk or ITSM type applications, payroll, timekeeping. So I've had a variety of applications that I've had to deal with.
Okay. And then Lou, you came in when you were actually installing, right? But they started installing or started doing the planning. And then when you came in, were you the platform owner right away when they started doing that work, or did you grow into that role over time?
No, I was the platform owner right away, John, and good morning and thanks.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's right out of the gate. I was hired on to be the platform owner to take it over.
Okay. And then you were doing some planning around like the CMDB and the release management and structuring all that before you went live, and that.
Well, let me put it this way. Within the first 3 months, I already had started writing the roadmap for the next 5 years.
Okay. And what was the big focus on that?
Well, the initial 8 months or so, there was a push and a commitment to deliver the platform by the end of the year. So regardless of any planning that was done prior to getting here, we were already committed. So we had to be creative in meeting that deadline to get the initial implementation done for ITSM.
Okay. So that top level, that top line, I guess, on their platform owners, actually developing the initial roadmap and then figuring out what goes first and all that.
Yeah, correct. I mean, the CMDB that's why the roadmap was created, because you want to think out your releases in terms of, okay, you're going to implement ITSM. You're not going to have the time to, create a whole CMDB populated with everything you need to run incident management, change management, and you won't have potentially all your catalog items in there to even run request fulfillment. So you just plot it out for future releases. You're going to do, X, Y, and Z, and keep building it.
Yeah, and then when you came in, so you work with an integrator, and when you came in, did you respond to a platform owner role like the one you see here, or was it something different than that?
I think it was initially more on the project management side to get everything done, okay. Managing the scope, schedule, and budget for the initial implementation and cut over from the legacy system they were using at the time.
Okay, so more of a PM role.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then that's interesting too, because there's a lot of parallels there. with a digital product manager, which isn't a really well-defined or I guess there's not a lot of people with that title today, but I think there's a mixture of people coming from application management, from project management, like you both come from, and then also people coming from even service management if they made it there, right? So service managers coming into that role. So a lot of times we start talking about digital product management and you know, that coming in and the platform being the product in this case. Yeah, that's interesting to see all the different backgrounds that come in from all those areas. Now, Tina, when you came in, so you're at Western Governors University, and when you came in, did you come from project management as well, or do you have more of a development background? Because it sounds like you've been on the platform for 10 years, right? In different places.
Well, so WGU has had ServiceNow for 10 years. I've been here for a year. So it's a little different than these guys talking about standing up ServiceNow from the beginning. But I also have 10 years of experience with ServiceNow. I came into this role, I was aggressively recruited by WGU. I had never heard of WGU. It's well known on the west side of the country, less so on and I live in Michigan. But it was based on just what's in my LinkedIn profile that I was heavily recruited. And what I think the thing that probably made the most difference, but I have a lot of different leadership experience, both managing infrastructure teams and managing development, but I listed all of the modules we implemented. My prior job was at DTE Energy. DTE Energy is a top 100 ServiceNow customer because they've implemented so many parts of the platform. So I came in knowing a lot of what is possible.
Interesting. Okay. That's a lot of time on. So you're on the platform. What version does that go back to?
I don't remember. I worked in, I don't think it was Aspen, but I worked at GE before I was at DTE, and GE used to be one of the largest ServiceNow customers. I don't know if it still is, but that's going back 10 years ago. I don't remember which version it was.
Okay. So your background, so you're the one on the panel that wasn't a project manager first.
I have been a project manager. I've been a PMP for 20 years.
Okay. So that's same background then.
I was not a product owner. I was not a product manager though. I was a project manager.
Yeah. So you all came from projects to products.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So that's a little bit about the background. I'm wondering, I was going to talk about something else on here, but I think we'll cover that on the next section. All right. So if anybody has any questions about backgrounds and how people got here and kind of the roles, the other part I was going to talk a little bit about is that kind of the upward communication and then the communication to the team. So we can talk about that on the next slide a little bit. This is a slide that we've been using, and I've been trying to sprinkle it in and get the story right on here so that we can tell a story about managing digital products. And like I said, if you're not familiar with digital products, it's the same thing as services. A digital product can be a service, right? So it's more of a superset where a digital product, say, I could be managing an application, I could be managing a service, I could be managing a mixture of applications and services under a digital product umbrella. So if we look at this from the bottom up, right, we have all these technology assets that we're buying. And it's stuff in the data center. We're buying hardware, we're buying software, we're buying other equipment we need to run the network. Right? If you take all of those things, the cloud licenses you're doing, and then your enterprise applications, if you take all of those things and put them together, what your job is as people that are in technology, right, is to take that technology and shape it in a way that is going to produce value for your customers, for your employees. And then we have a couple on here. So there's basically 4 groups of products categories that we're looking at. So if you start from the left, the customers, you're providing customer services. And that's really what you want to do most on the digital side, is you want to use those technology assets to provide services to your customers. But you also have to make sure your employees are taken care of. Right? So if we're doing things like onboarding or app hosting, and then we have shared products. And these things could be like, I'm doing server management, I'm managing ServiceNow. We're going to talk about how this sits in that product bucket. And then we have factory. So the factory is where you would build things out. Like we have a ServiceNow factory, And some of the demands that come into ServiceNow that, hey, that's a PeopleSoft demand. Let's go build that in the PeopleSoft factory, or we might have a Java factory, right? So these are the services inside the factory, the services that build digital products, right? So there's these teams that build it. And that's where we're talking about product managers today. Usually the product owners will sit in those factories because they actually own those products. So if you're in the agile world, you might heard of product owners that sit over there. Now, what we're trying to do is really elevate all of those technologies. So we stop talking about technology, and they keep saying IT needs to move closer to the business. So the way you do that is you talk about these digital products or the services that are in the products. And that's a big part of what we're doing with all of our models, right? Is we're trying to move all of that technology and all of the people that work on the technology to move it up to those areas. So if you look at a ServiceNow, if you look at the roles of Tina, Lou, and Tom, right? They own this ServiceNow digital product. They own the platform. So if you look at them as a digital product manager, their job is to say, hey, I got this really cool thing. You should come use it. And there's going to be a bunch of different ways that they do that. And then they might say that when people do come in and say, I do have demand for that. I want to manage my assets on that platform. Right, then what they'll do in this case is they need to interact with the team that could build stuff. So that could be people that are inside the organization. That could be people that are contractors might come in and do some of that work for you, depending on what type of work it is, if you have the expertise in-house. Right, so they have to go over here and they say, okay, I'm going to give it off to some team that's going to build and develop it. And I'm not usually running that team as the platform owner, but sometimes I am. Sometimes I have to in the beginning. I have to oversee that team and the epics and the stories they're working on. Now, once that team's done, they're going to say, okay, how do I build a shared service, right? So they might, in the team, they might build a shared service. Like they might say, we're going to do asset management, or we're going to do service management. So your platform is now being used to do that. Or they could say that I'm going to do an employee service for you. So now sometimes it's interesting because you're in this IT pipeline and you're satisfying IT demands, but now you've done such a good job as a platform owner, a product owner, we'll say, that now there's other areas in the employee area that want to start using some of your platform, right? And this is where you start getting into HR or custom apps. And then sometimes people even go as far as to say, okay, ServiceNow, it can help deliver all kinds of services. So we're going to deliver out in this customer area. So students for Tina, and then citizens for Lou and for Tom, right? But whoever those customers are, patients, we were going to have somebody on here from the healthcare industry too. But that's kind of that's how I see the job. So what I want to do is open it up and kind of talk to you about how you actually do the job, right? There's the actual definitions, and then there's what you do. So Tina, you've been a big, basically a proponent of the platform, right, across WGU. I think that's what a lot of people brought you in for, right, is expansion. So can you talk a little bit about that? And I think even governance, right? There's, I think, more executive involvement than you had when you initially got there.
Yes. So when I've been here, like I said, I've been here about a year. Mm-hmm. When I got here, I would say that the ServiceNow team has been highly successful. They've had a great reputation in WGU. People submit requests that come into us in the form of stories. We have an agile process, and the team has been very responsive. We're also a little bit unique because we've had the platform so long. Some of the things we needed didn't exist. I have 7 developers. We have 140 custom applications. But we're starting to move more and more towards using things that are out of the box and so on. One of the first things that I did was to create a governance board. And I actually intended to start down at the manager level, but I told my boss, I'm new, I need you to help me figure out who's on it. And it's 6 vice presidents. Wow. So we have a top level governance board that looks at strategically, where do we want to go with this platform? And what are the things that we want to do with it? And we meet with them quarterly. And then we had a couple of big initiatives this year, even though we've had the platform for 10 years and our ITSM is strong. We did not have a CMDB. We had a kind of a homegrown CMDB. So we've just implemented that, and we're working on the health metrics with that. And also strategic portfolio management, where we've just gone live on that. And that will be the platform that everybody across the university uses for project management and for portfolio management. So that's huge. Yeah. And we will be the first academic institution to use ServiceNow to manage our academic programs. So how we develop what the programs will be that we offer to students, how we develop the courses, all of that will be managed in ServiceNow. And I'm starting to hear now across the business, I thought ServiceNow was just a ticketing system. People are beginning to realize that it's far more than that. The other thing that we did that was really key is that we had a LEAP assessment done. And for those of you that haven't heard about that, you should absolutely follow up with John or your account manager. LEAP assessment is where John was the person who did our LEAP assessment, and he came in and started with a couple of interviews with a couple of our VPs to determine what our strategy was, identified 4 different strategic imperatives, and then had a series of workshops with managers and directors around those strategic imperatives, and came back and with recommendations for what he thought we should do with the platform. It was an overwhelming amount of information, and I couldn't process it all at once. So what we're doing with that, there was about 40 recommendations in that, I think, is that we're using demand management in the SPM family to take all of those recommendations and process them as demands in ServiceNow and evaluate them. I'll be able to then take that and use and show my roadmap using Alignment Planner Workspace to our stakeholders.
Outstanding. So you're basically using, one of your big things right now is that factory component. Even though it might be a ServiceNow factory, it wasn't like the projects weren't being run by ServiceNow, but now that factory is actually going to be built out on the platform. Is that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Nice. And so even if it's demand for your ERPs or any of that, it's still going to go through ServiceNow.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Good deal. Yeah. So if you have any questions or anything or comments on there, we'll definitely get back to Tina on that. That's some interesting stuff on the expansion. And
the LEAP assessment that I mentioned, that's a free service that ServiceNow offers. Talk to your account manager. It was about a 3-month engagement that ServiceNow will provide to you to help you map out your strategy.
Yes. Good deal. Thanks for that, Tina. Right. And then on your side, Tom, I think you're focused mostly on 2 of these, right? And initially, because you're just getting ready to go live, I think, or did you already? Because I think you're mainly on 4 and 6 first, because you're a central IT organization. Is that right?
Yes, and we have gone live. We do have CMDB, ITAM, both software and hardware in place, and SPM, and we're getting ready to deploy ITSM. We have about 3 million CIs now in our CMDB. So we're a little ahead of where Tina is, but I'm envious because Tina's got a tremendous amount of experience that I think we could tap into. And Tina, we did the LEAP as well, and I concur. I think it's a great program, highly recommend it. But going back to your question, John, yeah, we're focused as far as marketing the platform, if you will, in a couple different areas. One being around public sector digital services and what that can do for us long-term with managing requests from our citizens. So we're getting ready to implement PSDS, as well as looking at how we can use App Engine. Within the state, there's a lot of different technologies being used to solve different problems. And to your point about the platform being deployed for a purpose, we see App Engine as a very viable tool to help reduce some of our tech debt and address applications that could benefit from using data that's available in ServiceNow. So we have a few agencies, one in particular that has almost 100 applications that they need to develop independently. So we're going down that path now.
How are you keeping it from everything landing on you? Do you have governance like Tina's developed with those VPs to make sure that they know that they're building a lot of this and it's not all on you to build it and manage it?
Well, I'll tell you, John, the LEAP program helped accelerate that. When you jump into deploying this application or this platform, there's a lot going on. and trying to get mind share from leadership to start driving that roadmap was difficult. I think as time went on, they started to see more and more of a need for it. And as you approach them with the LEAP program, the timing was perfect. We had our first official executive steering committee meeting last Friday and accepted the roadmap, made some changes based on internal changes that we saw from the LEAP program, just tweaking some things. But general consensus was wonderful. And we now have a roadmap. We have guiding principles. We have decision criteria. So now as a platform owner, I can respond to the requests coming in a lot easier because I know where the leadership wants to take this platform.
And you're set up there too, right? Are you on a board with other platforms that are being considered too for certain demand? And you're saying, hey, this is why.
So we have multiple platforms from a governance standpoint. And then we've also set up governance with our module owners. So the module owners are really taking in the requests from our users. If they're inconsistent now with the roadmap, then they bubble up to the executives.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, and then Lou, you've been focused a lot on, I think, the foundational components, right? Is where you really started in the beginning. You did a heavy focus on CMDB first, right?
The initial implementation, John, for ITSM, an upgrade, then an initial focus on discovery and the CMDB.
Recording, so we're good to start. Welcome everybody to our digital. That wasn't me.
Yeah, it was me.
Okay.
So yes, the CMDB was built with the platform was using the initial, responses to incident, problem, change without configuration items, without laptops, servers, etc. And we used the generic CI, it just came up with this idea of just say CI-laptop, CI-desktop, and that's all they used. Until I think it was release 5, we then went after the endpoints, the printers, the laptops, the desktops, got those all populated. And then I believe 2 releases later, we went after the data center gear, right? The servers, the network gear, et cetera. And that's how it evolved over a longer period of time.
Interesting. And I see you put your contract in there.
Yeah, that's going back to the digital product and what that is. And, many customers, I'm trying to think of what would get people's attention as they're multitasking in the background. But I recall Dr. Michelle Supper, who seems to be on the call today, gave a presentation not too long ago. And she was really insightful with regards to how she addressed applications, right? Business apps and the tendency sometimes of people to create many of those business apps instead of chunking them up, right, into a platform and having other applications within that platform, kind of a nesting. And then I see that Mike Hall is on, and Mike Hall was on another meeting one day that I think it was you, Mike. If it wasn't, I apologize, but was running into some constraints with regards to DPM, right? Where so many application services, I think it was, and ServiceNow, that part of DPM wasn't handling that, right? There was too many. And we just heard from Tom that said, he's got 3 million CIs in the CMDB. Well, get ready, Tom, because you're going to have a lot more than that as you evolve.
And what are you up to now?
It's probably 13 to 15 million. And, that's where the CMDB data manager comes in more of an importance to basically keep control of those and delete the orphan things that you don't need, et cetera, as more things get added. But ultimately, the digital product, from my perspective over the years evolving here, is really, you all have it if you have SAM and you subscribe to the content library. I think there are about 3.5 million digital products currently in that table provided by ServiceNow. And why I think those are really the digital products is because those particular records, the product itself, attaches to the model. The model then is basically going to attach to the discovery model. The discovery model will have the software installed that reflects that product. The catalog item will then attach to the offering. And then basically the offering is dependent on the application service. The application service is consumed by the business app. So that whole end-to-end is there and ready to be produced. But it's interesting in hearing Tom and Tina talk about, kind of where they are in the process, and the idea that from a buy-in, the executive committee, our customer is very much involved. However, we have to be very careful because the platform, as much as it's matured over time, is still not ready for an aggressive, look from the business. The business is starting aggressively looking at ServiceNow because, like Tina said, all the things they can do, that foundation, right? And all those pieces and parts better be in place, because if they're not, you're going to struggle, in my mind, to really help the customer flip the switch very quickly and give them whatever their business requirement is using ServiceNow.
All right. So, and I think you had a pretty good amount of, like, when you started staffing around ServiceNow, you had some people down here too, right? Like, did you have an architect, or were you filling that role initially?
Yeah, this is a IT managed service deal. So we support the IT outsourcing, what I put in the chat for the County of San Diego. So all of those roles are covered. And so we interact with all of those individuals, whether we're talking to a BA that's gathering requirements, or whether they're talking to an architect that's doing the solution design. Yeah. Right, where they all work in concert to move the ServiceNow platform along as it's interacting with other aspects of IT.
And that's really interesting about yours. Like the demand is so well documented in that outsourcing agreement you have, because you had probably 350 demands coming out of the gate that the platform had to nail right within the given time period, because it had to hit so many paragraphs in that contract, right?
Yeah, that is the blueprint. And the reason why I offered it, it's public information. And I've heard on this call users interacting with the business or other senior IT and trying to figure out what their services are. Well, in that schedule 4.3, all of those are typical IT services that every IT organization does. It's really not specific to the county. Colorado would have the same type of services. If you go look at it, you'll see what I mean.
Yeah, that was real interesting, because you could see, you could take the contract and then you can look at your all the modeling you did and actually map the contract right to it. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, why reinvent the wheel? You already had the blueprint.
Yeah, but and you have all the business language too. So by setting up your models, you know how to communicate with the business already, because they were involved in the contract writing, right?
Right. Well, but that's the evolution. So the constant selling of the customer is the potential of the platform, but eating our own dog food, IT has a lot that's sprawled over a long period of time in other ways, SharePoint sites and websites that are custom built that provide some kind of IT purpose. So the idea would be to gather all that up, get that all in the platform. And once all that's done in maybe the next 2 or 3 years, then start looking at the customer facing services. Like some of the other organizations that you're aware of already have the public offering, where they're allowing their customers to go, from the community to go fill in a pothole, or request to fill in a pothole down their street. And so they go in there and they submit that request, and it's a digital request, right? It's going to the ServiceNow catalog in the background.
And you did a little bit of that with COVID too, right? Because
we did the health book. So that was a response to that crisis, where we basically have it open to the public to go register for their COVID test.
That's interesting because you were running all IT services, and then they came to you for that, or how did that was weird that they just used you for that one public service and you weren't really in that bucket before, right?
Well, because I think it was implemented in weeks, like 4 to 6 weeks, it was done. So it was more of a rapid, the ServiceNow platform, by going to the store and pulling that down and doing some configuration, got it up and running very quickly, more so than maybe building it on your own or other applications that would have had to handle it.
Yeah, I remember that fire drill because you're doing all this stuff and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, do this. And you're like, whoa.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a fun one. And Lou, I think you can probably just go into the first question. There was a question about, how are you filling the CMDB? Are you using Discovery today?
Yeah, ServiceNow Discovery is being used with an integration to Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager to bring in the software, from the desktops and laptops. So we get the printers and basically all the endpoints, and then also the servers and the network gear. I mean, whether you're using ServiceNow Discovery or another Discovery, to be successful, you have to have some kind of Discovery. If you're trying to do it manually, it's just, unless you have like 10 FTEs and that's all they're going to do, you're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah. Pamela, do you have anything else there, or was that enough?
No, that was it. Thank you. And so you're using Discovery also for all of your cloud hosted CIs as well?
All of which type of CIs?
Oh, cloud, like the ones in AWS.
Oh, yeah. In fact, the configuration item field on an incident, problem, or change by default out of the box would look at all your CIs, right? And you try to open that up and you have a big CMDB like 13-15 million, it's going to take a long time. So for the cloud, we parsed it with like some code that said, okay, if I want to look at a cloud CI, a resource in the cloud, then check this box and it would show only those CIs. So you have to be creative like that, because otherwise it's too much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And then, Paul, I don't see raised hands, but Mitch said you had this. Does Paul raising his hand?
Yes, I am raising my hand. Thanks. I appreciate that. First of all three panelists, thank you very much for sharing your stories with us, because there's a whole lot of parallel between the things that you've gone through and the things that you're experiencing and the things that you're looking to be dealing with in your future that really resonate with where my organization is at right now with the platform. But specifically, I would like to ask a question around the promoting of the ServiceNow platform as not just an IT tool, which it tends to get that reputation because when we initially installed it, we were very focused on incident and problem and change and config and things that are IT support oriented and not so much enterprise oriented. And now we would really want our business partners to understand the value of the platform. And so at MUSC, one of the things that we're doing is we're looking to start to use that as an enterprise architecture tool, starting off with the APM module and being able to do capability mapping and things of that sort, because now we're starting to talk about things that the business is interested in. And then the other aspect of it is the bringing in of App Engine and Integration Hub, and not so much opening it up completely to a Wild West developer community, but at least to be able to start to use the platform to build very specific applications for different areas of the business in order to be able to transform workflows and things of that sort. Have you gone through those steps as well? Have you gotten into the using your tools as an architect tool and opening up the tool and the platform to the community for other apps to be developed? And if so, number one, what were some of the challenges that you faced doing that? And what were some of the governing guidelines that you had to go through? Because we're right at that precipice right now. And any insights you could share with the group would really, well, honestly, selfishly make my job much easier.
So I know who's going to answer that one. I won't. We just had a conversation last night, Lou, right?
Yes, we did. That's why I was laughing. because it was apropos. Did you want me to expand? Or
yeah, definitely.
Please do.
Yeah, so, the enterprise architectural workspace just landed in the ServiceNow store, compatible with Tokyo and Utah. You ought to download it in your non-prod instance. What's interesting about that, and to answer your question, is you have to let the work speak for itself. These workspaces that are now being introduced in the platform have a lot of widgets on them that are presenting or surfacing data. And the customer is going to be attracted to that if the data is there and the data is complete and correct. So there's a quality aspect of there. If they happen to, and you're trying to sell and promote, go to these workspaces and the data is there or the data is not there, and if there, it's not passing the sniff test, then you've already lost, right? So that's why it's so important for enterprise architectural workspace, which basically is underpinned by APM, which has the technology reference model that would be built out of all of the software technologies that you're now controlling from an emerging mainstream containment and retirement perspective, right? From those life cycles, that is really highly relying on ServiceNow's lifecycle phases as part of the ServiceNow ITAM content library system. And that content library system needs a lot of work. It's crowdsourcing. So my tip for everybody that's interested is go there and contribute to your software, its lifecycle dates. And if it's not in the library, submit it to ServiceNow. Let's get it added into the library. I have a list of 1,000 products that I'm submitting soon to go. They're not going to be too happy with me when they get this list. So it's a lot of work for them, but it has to be added in there. So ultimately, that's my answer to you. If you go to those dashboards that are out of the box or the workspaces and you're surfacing up good quality data, then I use that to sell, to say, hey, this is what we already have. We could do so much more. But if you can't present that, it's going to be a hard sell.
Yeah, let me follow up if I could and then I'll let someone else get some questions in there as well. Regarding the amount of data that's in ServiceNow, obviously, as we're building a CMDB, we're gathering, like you said, millions of CIs, and the business partners, I'm not 100% convinced, are really interested in knowing about every nut and every bolt that actually exists in our environment. And so I believe that there's a demarcation point where we're probably wise to isolate and segregate the access to that kind of information to the business folks who are not necessarily caring about the technology below the application, but they are interested in the apps that they use to enable the business capabilities that they actually are responsible for. And so, I guess, what I'm getting at is, so at what point do you feel there is a need to craft or restrict the amount of information that you get? And regarding your point about the crowdsourcing, this is the part B of my follow-up. Do you feel that the crowdsourcing aspect of getting all of that data at the upper layers, because you can't discover a business capability, you can't discover, you know what I'm saying? Those are things that the business has to describe who they are and what they do in order to get that stuff input. Is that stuff better coordinated by the IT people or by the enterprise architect, not the solution architects, but by those business architects that are able to work closely with the different areas of the business and interview them and gather the information related to their business capabilities, and then getting that stuff inputted and updated and maintained inside of the APM module?
Oh, there's a lot there.
Yeah, take it away, Lou.
Well, they're all in the room, but
I owe you a beer, by the way, Lou. And all of you are welcome to join us for that.
I would just say they're all in the room, but the business people are leading those discussions for sure.
Yeah. And you have an EA team that's a customer of yours, right? So that's as the platform owner. And then Tina, did you get that question on there from Manoj? Is that the one you answered down below, or did you want to add some onto that before we go into that?
But I can answer it here as well. He
Okay.
wanted to know how we were moving from customs to out of the box. And it's really one stakeholder at a time. There's some capabilities I probably won't touch, like ITSM thing. We did some custom things around mission critical incidents and so on. We'll probably just leave that alone. But with our security team, for example, we had implemented one piece that actually turned out to have a flawed data model. Mm-hmm. And so explaining that to them and then getting them to step back and look at what are all the pieces that IRM offers and how do they fit together instead of trying to take things on piecemeal has helped. And it really, it's each capability at a time. We're doing the same thing with our purchasing organization. We have a very good homegrown solution, but some of the things that you get out of the box, we didn't build. And so a lot of it is really looking at each capability one at a time. We bring in ServiceNow to give us demos on how that capability works. And then we discuss whether it makes sense to move to that versus keep what we have. But a lot of times you get things and you grow with the platform if you can go to the out-of-the-box solution. The things that we built custom are static unless our stakeholders ask us to build something else on them. So there's a long-term benefit to moving towards out of the box where it makes sense. We won't move everything to out of the box, but
cool. Thanks.
Thanks, Gina.
And so there might be some more in there. I'm going to go through the questions afterwards. And if there's any we missed, I'll make sure we get back to you. I want to go through now. Tom, maybe you could start out. And so you got your implementation under your belt. Your go live this month. Congratulations on that. So what is some advice that you can give to other people that are either platform owners today or aspiring to be a
I would say,
learned?
as we've heard here, governance is critical.
Yeah.
Understanding that roadmap and having people aligned to that, absolutely critical. For us, one thing that I've struggled with was budgeting. Certainly in the state and local arena, budgets have to be formulated and approved years in advance. And I have struggled because I've kind of jumped into the implementation where we have had difficulties with having enough resources. Now, recently, I've been able to add some resources. So I now have a architect, and I've had an architect from day one, which is good. I had one developer, but now we're up to 3 developers. I have an ITOM administrator. I have a CMDB administrator, and we just added a platform administrator. So I would say staffing and making sure that you have a good plan around staffing so you're not short would be certainly helpful. And then I would say surround yourself with individuals that are excited about innovation. There's a lot here. And, to have passionate people on your team really makes a difference because we're in a market or we're working with a platform that is so dynamic. And for people that are willing to take risks, try new things, get out there and explore new technology, it's invaluable to have those type of people on your team.
And I love coming into your organization, how willing they are to make changes too. A lot of people want to leave everybody in the same jobs and then have all this change happen. It's like, you can't do that. People got to do new things. Awesome advice. And how about on your side, Tina, what's your big takeaways after 10 years?
I agree with everything they said, but I would also say, so I have a team of 7 developers. I have a BA Scrum Master. I have a platform engineer and a system administrator, but I still use vendor partners. And so it's knowing when to use them and how to choose them. I do not have one single partner. If I'm going to do something in SecOps, I go to my account manager at ServiceNow and say, which vendors are best in class for this capability? And those are who I work with. So I have multiple vendors. And in my last job, we were working with 6 different vendors at the same time. That was a little bit much, but we were able to do that and we used SPM to manage each of these vendors. They had to manage their project in the platform. We had a governance meeting with all of them, but we looked for who had the domain knowledge in this capability, because every vendor will tell you they can do it all. and they probably can, but I want the one that is best in this. So.
And I love the way you all do this well, all three of you, but the way that you take in, you don't call the vendor in and say, implement demand management. Like you shape demand management and what you think it's going to be. And then you get all your demos and get informed. And then you have a pile of demands when they come in to work on. And here's you already have the backlog. You don't say, come in and do it for me. Cause that gets rough sometimes. Cause then the vendor is dictating everything for you. So you want to let them do some, but not all of it. And I really like the way you guys do that, especially like Lou was just talking about APM, the way you got all that data set up before you brought the product in, right? I think that's really important to get in front of that. And Lou, how about your advice?
Well, I think Tina nailed it. Get back to out of the box. There are a lot of problems that accomplish. I mean, I think sometimes your demand comes in and you go create something, but yet you still haven't built the foundation. When I drive down the street, I see, oh, they're clearing a pad, right? And then maybe weeks later, I start seeing, oh, they're building concrete. And then a couple of months later, I see the wood frames start coming up, and then I see it start closing in. So that is all ServiceNow, and that doesn't happen overnight. So if you're already kind of in the bedroom in a hollowed out frame trying to do something, everything underneath you is not quite ready for whatever you're going to do. And then my final point is, if you're going to go to knowledge this year, feel free to let me know. Happy to meet up with you.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that. Lou, you've met with a lot of people on this call, I know. and I appreciate all that. All right, we've got a couple minutes. I just want to touch base on the next few topics. We've been getting together with a couple different people, and next conversation we're going to have is going to be really interesting. Jason's going to take on ChatGPT and all that's going on there, and then some of the interactions that we're having with the platform and it. So there's a couple big areas that he's poking into. He's trying to figure out which of the areas to bring in, because there's just so many people in ServiceNow that are trying to figure out what that looks like. And then after that, we're kicking around a topic right now. Is anybody doing Zero Trust, ZTA? I see Wayne shaking his head, but we have a couple people on ZTA. If any customers are doing that, because we don't like to speak unless we have somebody like ServiceNow come in and give an opinion. And Wayne, do you have some background in ZTA?
Just that we've been trying to move towards maturing into a zero trust architecture as a whole within the company, right? So,
okay,
got some knowledge, ZTA principles. I encourage my development team to learn about and become more familiar with ZTA as we move into migrating our company into that sort of posture for building our services.
Okay. Yeah, because if we want an opinion from somebody that's actually doing it, so we have theorists already. I got somebody from the open group that owns the ZTA standard we can bring in, and because I work on the open group a little bit on some of the TOGAF standards and IT for IT. Mm-hmm. And we have somebody from ServiceNow, his name is Arun, but we want a customer to kind of come in too and provide a real perspective instead of the theory that we give.
Yeah, I think what you see is we're adopting ZTA principles, but we don't actually have like a formal initiative to move ZTA yet, although I believe that that's coming soon.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll reach out to you. Maybe we can put something together there.
Yeah, maybe I can get one of my peer directors to talk to you, and maybe he'll give you.
Thank you. And then, so those are the next two topics. We're going to do that Zero Trust and talk about how CSDM works in there. And then the third one that we're working on right now is going to be around value streams. Value streams have been getting a lot of mind share lately, and we have some things coming out in the products that you'll get already if you have SPM with value streams. And Charles is going to run that, and we have a guest speaker from Switzerland too, who's done a lot of work. So between him, Charles, and again, if any of the customers right now, if you're big on value streams, want to get a little boost and an early look at some of our product stuff, anybody doing anything on value stream mapping or value stream management? Okay.
Within the tool?
Within the tool or in general? Right, the tool's going to help you eventually. There's something coming out for that.
Okay.
But we want to just talk about, I'm talking a lot too about value streams, like in the open group, value streams versus portfolios. and kind of where they overlap, because a lot of the funding now is being looked at the value stream, and which may touch 5 or 6 portfolios, right?
Right. So within our company, our business architects try to do value stream analysis as part of their capability-based planning activities. Okay. And I think a lot of people are very similar. And the reason I asked about it in the tool is because I know one of the reasons that we own other products besides ServiceNow for trying to manage enterprise architecture activities is, previously being unable to do a type of value stream and process-based analysis that the business architects expected out of a tool. So,
yeah. So the new value stream stuff, I think it's there. Charles, are you on? I think it's in Utah, the value stream stuff. So you might want to take a look there. It's the first cut what we're doing. So
I think we're over a minute, so you're probably losing some people.
Okay. Yeah, this is a great meeting. I really appreciate all 3 of you coming in, and it's so good to hear how far off or how close I am on the stuff that I think product platform owners do. So thanks again, you guys. This is awesome.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Bye, Errol.
Bye now.